Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel and welcome to another GT Sport opinion piece. Videos where I basically give my opinion on a subject. The subject for this one is why is this game so popular? So GT Sport is into the third year of its life on PlayStation 4. I've been playing for around about a year and a half of that time and the game seems every bit as popular now as it did when I first started playing. Many of the players that I first started encountering in my sort of early days on the game still seem to be playing. I still see very familiar names, regular names in FIA races. I was also watching some streams and videos of popular YouTubers on Gran Turismo Sport before I started playing, people like Super GT, Tidgenate or Key. I would tune into their kind of top split FIA races, and I still do quite a lot as well now. I'm not good enough to compete in them myself, unfortunately, and I still see a lot of the same names competing in those as I did way back then. So there certainly seems to be a longevity to the sort of way that people play this game, and they're playing it for a long time. The inspiration behind this video was I'd seen a lot of people over the last year and a half talking about how they've been fed up with the game, or they're getting to their sort of end of their tether with their game and they weren't going to play it, or they were quitting, or they're going to cut it down, they're going to start playing other racing games. But the reality is that for everyone that I've heard say that over the last year and a half, they're all now back playing GT Sport. So there must be something about the game that drags them back to it. And then we're going to take a sort of little bit of a look at why I think this, or the reasons that I think people continue to play this game. So here's a world leaderboard from a recent daily race. You can see there's 83,000 players set a time in that one. That was Group 3 at the Red Bull Ring. This leaderboard here is Group 4 at Spa, where we have 76,000 players with set a time in that. And that's by no means everyone that's still playing the game. A lot of people don't compete in sport mode at all. They just sort of play it in private leagues, private lobbies, or just play the single player, I guess. So let's move on to taking a look at why I think this game maintains its popularity. And first up we have the handling. So for me, one of the biggest reasons that Gran Turismo is so popular in the sort of racing world is its handling model. Now it's never going to get any prizes for having super advanced physics, but I don't think it's trying to do that either. I don't think that's Polyphony Digital's aim with the game. I think they're trying to give you a handling model where you can be extremely consistent. It's very accessible, so a lot of players can play it and kind of get on top of it or get to grips with it. And I guess most importantly, it's a fun handling model as well. You can kind of certainly push the cars beyond probably what you could do in real life, but if you push them too far then they will bite back. You still have to drive the car like a simulator to get the best out of it, and there's a surprising amount of depth to the handling as well, which is why you can do lap times or laps that look very similar to the best players out there, yet stop the clock a second and a half later than them. So there's definitely, you know, a depth to the handling model out there that can be exploited by the better players. One thing I've always felt when playing GT Sport is that when I make a mistake, I've always kind of understood why it's happened. I've always, if I've went off the track or spun out, I've always been able to kind of look at it and go, well, that was my fault, I went too deep into the corner, I got too early on the throttle, something like that. And if one thing that's going to make people switch your game off is if your car's spinning out without any real good reason, which can happen in a lot of the sort of more in-depth simulators. I feel like, you know, people don't understand why the cars just keeps hitting this curb and spinning out, and they're going to switch it off. I just don't think you get that in Gran Turismo Sport. And one thing just to add before we end the kind of subject on the handling, it's very good to play this game on the pad. I very rarely play on the pad, but I can pick it up and start lapping within about a second of my wheel times fairly quickly. So again, something like that means that you can sort of open the game up to a very large player base and give them that fun factor as well. Moving on to reason number 2 why I think GT Sport is so popular is the racing. Now, the racing in Gran Turismo Sport can be absolutely fantastic. I think this is also comes from a benefit of having a very accessible handling model that we kind of touched on earlier on in the video. So you've got a lot of people who can kind of get up to speed or get pretty competitive very quickly in the game, or just get competitive full stop. And of course the way that Gran Turismo Sport sort of structures its online races, where you're sort of matched against players of similar ability, means that You don't have to try too hard to sort of don't have to look too long, I guess, to sort of find yourself in a very competitive race where you're racing with other drivers around you in close proximity for the duration of the race. So here we are on lap 13 here, we're still racing with 2 drivers in front of us. Lap 6 here, you can see we've got a big group of cars in front of us here that we're still battling with. Now of course some races go a bit Pete Tong, sometimes you're going to meet dirty drivers out there, of course. It's going to happen in every single racing game known to man or woman, but in general in Gran Turismo Sport, I think certainly in my experience anyway, I've had far more good moments in close racing and close battles and race long battles than I've ever had anything kind of negative. So in my opinion, no racing game on console comes anywhere near to providing you with regular, close, competitive, engaging racing and battles than GT Sport. And I would say it's probably as good as anything on any platform in that regard. At the end of the day, we're here to race, so if a game can provide that kind of level of racing on such a regular basis, then I can understand why it maintains its popularity. Moving on to reason number 3 why I think this game maintains its popularity, and we're going to talk driver rating and we're going to talk sportsmanship rating. So driver rating is something that you build up as you compete in sport mode and online races. The higher you can keep that, obviously the sort of higher lobbies you'll get placed in daily races. And your sportsmanship rating is how clean you drive, so obviously if you can keep your sportsmanship rating nice and high, you should be sort of fielded against cleaner drivers and kind of drivers who are more considerate on the racetrack. A lot of people say they don't care about their DR and their SR. I would suggest a lot of these people are maybe telling porky pies. People are constantly talking about their DR and their SR when I'm on like GT Planet, or if I'm looking at sort of the chat and streams or the comments section of videos. I do think people care more about it than they let on. Of course, the higher you keep it up, the sort of higher you get placed in your daily races. But more than that, I think it's more important for the FIA championships. Obviously, the higher your DR is, the sort of stronger lobby you'll get placed in, and that means you get to fight for a higher number of points. So I think having a system where like everything you do matters in the online space is certainly something that keeps people engaged, even in the daily races, but more so in the FIA championships. Reason number 5 is they keep things nice and simple when it comes to things like setups. So there is no setup work involved in Gran Turismo Sport. Cars all come with a default setup, and there is a balance of performance element to it, which is designed to keep all the cars in each category performing pretty similarly. They get a lot of criticism for the balance of performance. I do think it's a little bit better than what people give it credit for. That's not to say there isn't elements of the car you can change. You've got things like the brake balance that we've got on the screen there, so you can kind of move the brake balance to the front or the rear. That can kind of change how the car handles in the braking zones and in the corners. Also can have an impact on how your tyre wear. You can even your tyre wear out using the brake balance. Some races involve saving fuel, so you can save fuel by short shifting, or you can use the fuel map or go on the screen there, so you've got like a power setting and you've got a lean setting, and then you can kind of also change your traction control on the fly as well using the MFD. You can change it from 0, or you can change it all the way up to 5, which is very intrusive on your acceleration. But it's all done in a very intuitive and easy to understand way, which means that without too much practice or learning, you can get right on top of these various things in gameplay. I have seen people suggest that they want things in the next game or added to this game, like sort of formation laps or manual rolling starts or manual pit stops, but I do believe that I think that's only a sort of thing that really appeals to a very small part of the player base. I think most people might think doing those things are pretty cool for the first time or the second time, but I think people get kind of fed up with doing that stuff. So I think Gran Turismo does a good job of having these things in the game but keeping them very simple and easy for the large player base to use and understand. And finally, reason number 5, well, it pays to look good. Gran Turismo Sport is now 3 years old. It essentially runs on nearly 10-year-old hardware in the original PlayStation 4. I know it only came out in 2013, but it certainly was no way advanced when it came out with its CPU and GPU technology. I still play it on a base PS4 that I bought at launch. It refuses to die. I'm not complaining about that, but I would quite like to get a PS4 Pro. But for all that, playing Gran Turismo Sport on the base PS4, to me it's still the best looking racing game out there, even compared to some of the PC monsters, like Assetto Corsa Competizione. I've seen that on 4K at epic settings. It's a very smart looking game, but to me it's got that typical PC look to it. It's very, very clinical. There's nothing really organic about it. It looks a bit, I don't know what the word is for it. It just doesn't look right, whereas GT Sport to me just looks far more realistic. So yeah, might not be that important to some people, but I do think a lot of people, graphics do matter in computer games at the end of the day. Graphics absolutely matter. People like great looking games. They'll give a average game a pass, or say an average game's great just based on the fact that it's got some world class visuals out there. So I definitely think a big part of the appeal with Gran Turismo Sport is its visuals, and it all comes in that nice 60 frames per second. So that's my 5 reasons why I think Gran Turismo Sport is so popular. Let me know in the comments down below why you think GT Sport lives on. It still has such a large player base. Let me know if you agree with what I've said and my reasons, or disagree. Always happy to engage in the comments. Until then though, thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully it's been relatively entertaining. Please hit that like button, please hit the subscribe button if you like what we're doing. And until the next video, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you all again soon. Goodbye now.